Good morning. It's Liverpool Transfer Daily here on the Blood Red channel. Welcome along. Ben Bocsak of Liverpool.com alongside me, Guy Clarke, this morning as we discuss the latest transfer rumours involving the Reds. Come and say hello, get involved in the chat box, and we'll get to your comments and questions through the course of the show. Ben, we've got Diogo Jota and Nat Phillips to talk about this morning. Let's start with Diogo Jota. And well, according to reports, he's on the verge of agreeing a new contract at Liverpool. He's still plenty of time left on his current deal, but this just kind of deserved reward for how he started his Liverpool career.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, he's kind of dipped in form towards the end of last season, but overall, if you look at his numbers, he's been really good for Liverpool. Surprisingly good, almost. I think when he came from Wolves, no one really expected him to be as good as he has been, and I think it's only right that he is given a contract extension, and I think it's also kind of an indication about Liverpool's plan for the future. Obviously, with Roberto Firmino's contract running out, Jota will have an increased role, I think, in the team. So perhaps it's also an indication that Liverpool don't necessarily intend to keep Firmino if they are willing to give an extension to Jota first, if that's their priority, even though, Firmino's contract is probably more of a pressing concern in terms of the expiry of it. So yeah, that's something to watch. Obviously, it's early days, but it is interesting that Liverpool, at the moment, there's more sort of talk around Jota rather than Firmino.
Do you think this has anything to do with the fact that Mohamed Salah and Sadio Mane's contracts ran so late, or do you think more it's kind of the case of both Salah and Mane were given fresh contracts after they'd started strongly and reward for that form? What's your view on that?
I think it's a bit of both, really. I think Liverpool will not want to have a repeat of with all their three key players having a contract that expires in 2023 again. And I think at the same time, I think Liverpool is a club where, if when you move there, you don't necessarily get the highest wages, perhaps, but based on your performance, there's always an opportunity to improve that, and that's been shown plenty of times. And eventually, Liverpool do reward the players that come.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of Jota, 21 goals in all competitions last season. No, sort of the second half of the season maybe fizzled out a bit for him, but he's been such an integral part, hasn't he? I mean, he's only been at the club for 2 seasons, yet it feels as though he's been there for so long. And I suppose that only speaks really to what you said before in terms of just how quickly he slotted in upon that move from Wolves. Maybe not many people from the outside saw just what good a fit he would be for Liverpool, but he's been, I think Jurgen Klopp described him last season at one stage, the perfect signing. He has been seamless, hasn't
he? Yeah, and I think in the dressing room as well. Recently, Pep Blinders' book sort of revealed the moment when the Liverpool players found out that Sadio Mane could be going to Bayern Munich, and apparently Jota was the first one who went up to him and he was like, "What are you doing? You can't leave us." And Blinders said that his Trent Alexander-Arnold was sitting next to him, and he said he's more of a Scouser, more of a Republican than I am, and I think that just shows you how well he's integrated into the team on and off the pitch. That's before we start to talk about his performances, his pressing, and his goals as well. And I think, he's still relatively young, and he's got plenty of time left in his legs to do even better at Liverpool.
How big do you think this season could be from him? I know he's injured now and it's going to take him some time to get up to speed, but he could be a really crucial player for Liverpool this year, couldn't he? In helping adapt Darwin Nunez to the league. We've spoken a lot about Roberto Firmino won't just give up that slot easily. Nunez will have to earn it. But equally, Luis Diaz off the left-hand side, Jota has, if he's shown one thing during his time at Liverpool, it's he's a cool, calculated killer in the box and really does score. And whilst Luis Diaz has looked very good, there's been a few question marks over maybe his final product and his goal return. And I suppose Diogo Jota is the ideal player who can help carry the load for both players. And even moving forward, if Firmino leaves, it looks as though it will continue to be kind of that front four model for Liverpool that Jurgen Klopp picks 3 out of 4 players rather than it just being the same 3 names every week.
Yeah, I think he brings unique qualities, I think, to this Liverpool team. I think obviously from his pressing, I think sometimes it even surpasses Firmino in the way he jogs back. And obviously, unlike Firmino, he can play on the left, he can play on the right if necessary, and I think that makes him an important player in this Liverpool team. And like you said, he can definitely ease the load off of Nunes' shoulder with the expectations so high. And I think competition is healthy, especially if you're competing for the top titles, and having three elite attackers in vying for the same position essentially in that number 9 role is going to benefit Liverpool, and it's going to see I think everyone sort of perform at their peak levels, because they know if you don't produce, if you don't do give it your 100%, then there's two players on the bench who are willing to come on and take your place, and who are obviously just as good.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Let's get into the chat box then. Bava says, Salah, superstar player. Of course, he's always on the lips of Liverpool fans. Bruce says, I think our season will depend on players like Jota, Jones, Keita, Harvey Elliott, and Fabio Carvalho. Could well be very true in that regard. Tom Smith, what's the contract news? I missed the start. Well, Tom, we're here every morning, 9:30 sharp, and the news Diogo Jota looks set to be rewarded with a contract extension at Liverpool and increased terms at Liverpool, given his start to his time at Anfield. Ben, let's move on to our other story we've got to get into today, and that's the future of Nat Phillips. He was on loan at Bournemouth the second half of last season and helped them to promotion from the Championship to the Premier League. I have to say, having been part of a promotion at Stuttgart, having been part of a promotion now at Bournemouth as well, and performed admirably for Liverpool during the run-in, obviously the season before last. To me, he's kind of earned his stripes and proven that he's a Premier League ready player and deserves a move to a fellow Premier League side. And Bournemouth, having had him, have been interested through the course of the summer. There's been little movement down on the south coast in terms of incomings. And Fulham, who Liverpool play on the opening day on Saturday, equally now, according to reports, have lodged their interest in him.
Yeah, it's been surprising that he hasn't gone to Bournemouth. Sorry, hasn't he? You would have think, having settled in so quickly after his January loan spell, that Bournemouth would have been keen to sort of tie him down, especially considering they haven't really brought in anyone this summer. So it is a surprising one. But I think Fulham are equally on the lookout for a defender. I think they've been linked with a few other defenders as well, and Phillips is not a bad option, and I think he would probably go into that starting 11 straight away. Or I wouldn't be surprised if he does, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets that move that he would be starting week in, week out for them. It just depends, I think, on the transfer price really from Liverpool's perspective, because they will value him highly, and I think rightly so. For a defender, he's still very young, I think at 24, 25. And he's performed not just in the Premier League for Liverpool, but we've seen him have elite performances in the Champions League against AC Milan, for example, at the San Siro. Everyone still remembers that turn in his own half, and I think he is a defender who brings a lot of qualities. Obviously, his aerial power and his ability is something that has stood out at Liverpool, but he's also smart in his decision making, and even though he doesn't have the biggest, the most pace for a centre back, he compensates well for that with his positioning, and I do think he's an underrated defender.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Anyone who's got the mentality to Cruyff turn Zlatan Ibrahimovic in his own penalty area will always have the heart of Liverpool fans. And what a moment that was. Lipok has got in touch. It's sad to see him leave, but I think it's best for all parties. The sell-on/buyback clause. I'm sure if Julian Ward's learnt one thing from Michael Edwards, there will be some canny transfer negotiating going on in that. Marco Silva say Fulham have entered the race for him. It's been a slow race at that. Wonder kind of if and how it will actually play out, because Liverpool still, of course, have set Vandenberg on the books as well. And whilst they have 4 world-class centre-back options, I'm sure Jurgen Klopp won't want to just have 4 centre-backs in the building, and probably will want a fifth in case any injuries, of course, do occur. But in terms of Fulham, Marco Silva, who Liverpool, of course, play on the opening day, as I said before, he's come out and spoken in the press saying we've only got 2 centre-backs in. We've only got a squad of 16 players who are ready for the Premier League, and that his squad aren't too ready. Again, it kind of highlights the point of how well Liverpool have done, because there seems to be so many clubs across the Premier League this season who, with how early the season's starting, just simply aren't ready in terms of their squad. Jurgen Klopp still wants to fine-tune the physicality, but he's not waiting to get any more bodies in the door.
Yeah, it's a strange one. I think that the Premier League clubs have acted so late. Even with some of the bigger clubs like Chelsea are kind of, searching around for options. It has been a surprising one, and I think it definitely gives Liverpool the edge. They've been smart in their investment. They've done it early. Fabio Carvalho was basically almost done in January. And Nunes as well. That was done relatively quickly after they had found out what Sadio Mane's decision was going to be, and obviously Calvin Ramsey as well, who we haven't seen unfortunately, but he was done, before the start of pre-season, and I think that's important because pre-season has given Liverpool a really big edge in integrating these new players, and I think you saw that in Nunes and Haaland's sort of contrasting performances in the Community Shield. Nunes seemed like he'd been playing for Liverpool for years, essentially, and when he came on, whereas Haaland very much looked like a new player, and he was still sort of trying to adjust to that system. And I think in this early few weeks in the season, that's going to be a big edge for Liverpool.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Time to get your questions in here on Transfer Daily. We will get to them before we go. We've got the first one up here from Mr. MH, who says, question: with the injury to Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, do you think there are any more incoming signings, or does the club feel comfortable enough with what they have? I mean, the line was that Liverpool wouldn't act unless there were any serious injuries, and Oxlade-Chamberlain's hamstring injury does appear to be a bit more serious than first thought. Ben, what's your take? Do you think Liverpool, it would be enough to push them into the transfer market again? Or, I mean, I suppose with a player like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, they're always maybe legislating for injuries given his record.
Yeah, it's a tough one because can you really find someone in the market who is similar to Oxlade-Chamberlain and who would be willing to come in as a sort of potentially 5th or even 6th choice central midfielder? And I think the answer is probably no. You can't really find someone like that's value for money as well, who will come in and play a similar role to Chamberlain. And obviously Liverpool have, they've kept their cards on their chest, but we know that Jude Bellingham is the main target next summer, and I think Liverpool will wait it out for him rather than go in and sign a midfielder that they don't necessarily really want. They really want Jude Bellingham, and I think they will wait for him. And that's really been the strategy from the start, really, when FSG took over.
Yeah, definitely. Uzoka has got in touch here. Any incomings with Morton leaving? Well, I don't know if Morton kind of was classed probably as a real first team player. I know he did make appearances last season and really did show what he could do. And obviously the move to Blackburn Rovers, I think more looking towards a development route for him as what happened with Harvey Elliott when he went to Ewood Park, and hoping maybe for Liverpool that can come to something. Got a couple more questions to get into. Ben, I'll throw this one your way. Do you think there's something wrong with the goalkeeping department in terms of maybe the coaching? Seem to have so many injuries for goalkeepers. I mean, it's one of those. Alisson Becker seems to be an injury-prone goalkeeper. Of course, he's fit more than he's not, but for kind of the average goalkeeper, he does seem to pick up a lot of injuries. And of course, Caoimhin Kelleher has pretty much missed all of pre-season as well.
I think it's just been a freak occurrence this summer that Kelleher has been injured. He doesn't necessarily get that many injuries. With Alisson, it's always been the case with him. I think injuries are just part of his game, but I think it's not necessarily that rare. I think goalkeepers do get injured. I think Ederson in particular has missed a few games for City in the past, and it does happen. It's just, I think, unfortunate. it's been unfortunate rather than anything wrong with the goalkeeping department, I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I say, maybe injury prone is a bit harsher on Allison, but he does seem to kind of pick up one or two knocks, as it were, through the course of a campaign. Final one then, Lipok's back in touch and says, is winning the Premier League alone a successful season, or do we need to pair that with a domestic cup, given how deep we got into all of the competitions last season? Thoughts, Ben?
I mean, I would take the Premier League right now if you were to offer it. But, obviously, I'm sure the Liverpool players won't be thinking like that. I'm sure they'll want to win everything again. And I think even though the squad has weakened a little bit, I still think there is enough there to maybe not necessarily compete on the domestic fronts, but definitely be competitive in the Champions League and the Premier League as well.
Yeah, we did the predictions on the Blood Red podcast, which is on the channel. If you want to go and watch that, I predicted a Premier League and Champions League double for Liverpool. I'm sure most people would snap my hand off for one of those, but I predicted both. Anyway, that's what it is. That's all we've time for here this morning on the Liverpool Transfer Daily. Thanks goes to Ben Bocsak for joining me, and thanks to you as well in the chat box. Really good chat this morning and plenty getting involved in the show. But from myself, Guy Clarke, and Ben Bocsak, thanks for your time and your company. It's bye for now.